If you only read one Southern Gothic revenge story today, make it this one because the perfect plantation marriage is about to crack in public. Drop a comment, what country are you from and what did this story make you feel? And if it stays with you, subscribe, follow, so you don't miss the next one. August pressed down on Natchez, Mississippi like a hand over a drowning mouth. Even the cicadas seemed to scream complaints into the thick air that hung between the live oaks, Spanish moss swaying without any real breeze to move it. Everpine Plantation stretched across 300 acres of cotton fields, its white columns rising from the red earth like bones from a grave that refused to stay closed. Evelyn Carrington stood at the second-floor window of the main house, her fingers pressed to the glass until they left fogged prints. She was 32, though people often insisted she looked younger. Something in her posture, the careful arrangement of her dark hair, the polish that spoke of Charleston finishing schools and French tutors. Her dress was the color of mourning doves, high-necked despite the heat. She had been at that window nearly an hour, staring down at the fields as if staring long enough might change what she knew. Below, the day's labor moved in slow, disciplined lines. 47 souls, though the colonel's ledger called them property. 47 people whose names she had memorized in the 3 years since her marriage, though she was never supposed to know them, never supposed to see them as anything but numbers in a book and hands in a field. "Mrs. Carrington," a voice said softly, "your tea is ready." It was Sarah's voice, Sarah, who had served this house for 12 years. Her hands marked by decades of work, her eyes holding secrets that would never be spoken aloud in front of white faces. Evelyn didn't turn. "Leave it on the table, Sarah. Close the door when you go." The door clicked. The room fell back into hush and shadow. French furniture gleamed in dim light imported as a wedding gift from her father, a reminder that she came from money older than the colonel's, a Charleston family whose ships had made fortunes before Mississippi was properly surveyed. She had been raised to be ornamental, to speak 3 languages, and smile at the right moments. She had been raised to marry well, which meant marrying wealth, which meant looking away when the source of that wealth was something polite society refused to name. But she had not been raised to be a fool. The first time she suspected it was December. The colonel came to dinner late, his shirt changed, but his boots still wearing red clay from somewhere other than the stables. He kissed her cheek with lips that tasted like whiskey and something sour. He talked about cotton prices while refusing to meet her eyes. The second time, it was February. She went looking for him to discuss the spring garden plans and found his office empty, his coat on the chair, his horse still in the stable. A house girl named Mercy, no more than 16, disappeared from her duties for the same hour. Mercy returned with her apron torn. The colonel returned with scratches on his neck he blamed on thorns. Evelyn said nothing. Women who spoke certain truths out loud were labeled hysterical, confined to dark rooms, and dosed into silence. So she watched. She listened. She learned the language of what happened between words in the pauses and the careful lies. By March, she knew the pattern. By April, she knew the names. By May, she stopped sleeping in the colonel's bed, claiming the heat made her restless. Moving to a small room at the far end of the hall where the lock was solid and the night was filled with the sound of her own breathing. The realization didn't arrive in tears. It arrived cold, sharp, and clear. One morning, she stood in front of her mirror and studied her face as if it belonged to someone else and thought, "He has made me complicit. By living here, by eating from this table, by wearing jewelry bought with this cruelty, I have become part of it." Then, quieter, more dangerous, she thought, "But I do not have to stay complicit." At first, the idea was a whisper she tried to crush. Ladies did not think such thoughts. Ladies endured. Ladies looked away with practiced grace. They took refuge in religion and embroidery and the belief that silence was virtue. But Evelyn found she was tired of being a lady. She spent June gathering information with the same precise attention she once applied to needlework. She learned which women the colonel favored, always the youngest, always the ones with the least protection. She learned the overseers knew. The house servants knew. Everyone on Everpine existed inside a conspiracy of silence enforced by fear. And she learned something else, something that became the foundation of what she planned. Power on a plantation was not merely ownership, whatever the law claimed. It was performance, daily theater dominance, and submission acted out until it felt inevitable. And theater Evelyn understood could be rewritten. By July, her plan had a shape. Audacious. Dangerous. It would destroy her reputation, possibly her life, but it would destroy him too. And that had become the only thing that mattered. She began with small changes. She stopped taking meals with the colonel, citing headaches and vapors. She spent more time near the quarters with medicine that actually worked, asking questions in a tone that sounded like charity and felt like investigation. The enslaved people watched her with suspicion at first. White women bearing gifts were rarely to be trusted. But slowly she built something like understanding. One man in particular caught her attention. Isaiah. 28, born on Everpine, his parents sold away when he was 12. He worked the far fields near the swamp where the mosquitoes were thick and the heat was worst. The colonel largely ignored him, too old to interest, too strong to be easy prey, and that made him perfect. She approached him as the work bell rang and the field hands began their slow walk back. The sun bled into the cypress trees, painting the world the color of old wounds. Isaiah. He stopped, his body going still the way a man goes still when a white voice notices him. Yes, ma'am. I need to speak with you privately tonight after dark, at the old stable behind the main house. Fear flickered in his eyes, then calculation. Ma'am, I'm not asking to order you, she said, keeping her voice steady. I need help with something that would hurt the colonel, hurt him badly. But it would put you in danger, which is why I'm asking rather than commanding. Come if you choose. Don't if you won't. But if you come ready to discuss something that cannot be undiscussed. She walked away before he could answer, her heart hammering. If he told anyone her plan would die, she would be confined, silenced, erased. That night the air brought no relief. Evelyn waited in the old stable, listening to distant singing from the quarters, the owls in the oaks, the river whispering beyond the fields. Then footsteps. Isaiah appeared in the doorway, a silhouette cut from moonlight. He didn't enter right away. He watched her like a man who had survived by understanding the shape of traps. What do you want, Mrs. Carrington? He asked at last. She stood with her hands clasped as if she were about to pray. I want to destroy my husband completely, publicly, in a way he can never recover from. And I need your help. The silence between them held the weight of years, of violence, of power imbalances so vast they felt like geography. Isaiah stepped inside and closed the door. I'm listening. Evelyn spoke carefully. He takes women from the quarters, girls. He does it because he believes his position makes him untouchable. He believes the law protects him. He believes no one will ever challenge him. Isaiah's jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. There was nothing to deny. I want to take that belief from him, she said. I want him to understand what powerlessness feels like, to witness something he cannot stop, cannot control, cannot escape. I want to humiliate him in front of this whole house in a way that haunts him. And how do you plan to do that? Isaiah asked, voice flat. She inhaled, and the next words felt like stepping off a cliff. She explained the plan in low measured tones, each detail laid like a brick. A dinner party, witnesses, a stage set so perfectly the colonel could not force his way out without exposing himself further. A moment designed to invert his world, to crack the illusion of supremacy in public light. When she finished, Isaiah stared at her a long time. You understand what you're asking, I do. You understand what it would cost you. My reputation, my standing, my safety, possibly my life. And you understand what it could cost me, he said. What it could cost all of us. Evelyn nodded. Which is why I'm asking. You have every right to refuse. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. Why? Because leaving would change nothing, she thought. Because running would not stop him. Because she was tired of being respectable in a world built on atrocity. Because I'm tired of being complicit, she said aloud. This is not justice. A world that cared about justice would have ended this already. This is revenge. Isaiah's expression didn't soften, but something in him shifted. There's a girl in the quarters, he said quietly. Ruth, 15. He took her. She tried to resist. He had her whipped. Then he took her anyway. Cold settled in Evelyn's chest like a stone sinking into deep water. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to, Isaiah said. That's how it works. He held her gaze. If I help you, it won't undo what happened to Ruth, but it might make him suffer. It might make him understand for one night what it feels like to be powerless. Yes, Evelyn said. That's the point. Isaiah exhaled slowly as if deciding whether to step into fire. Then I'll help you, he said. Not because I trust you. I don't. But because I want to see him broken. They planned the logistics in whispered detail. August 15th. The Great Hall. Every lamp lit. Every window open. Servants positioned as witnesses. Guests invited respectable neighbors who would hesitate to leave in the middle of scandal, trapped by their own devotion to decorum. Doors locked, keys hidden. Insurance prepared letters, evidence, names, dates sent to people who would ask questions if Evelyn vanished. 2 nights before the party, Isaiah asked her one last time if she was certain. Once this starts, he said, there's no taking it back. Everything has already changed, Evelyn replied. This just makes it visible. The colonel, in a twist so sharp it felt like fate mocking itself, suggested they host a dinner to restore their image. Evelyn smiled like a dutiful wife and offered August 15th something truly memorable. He agreed with relief, never realizing he had signed his own sentence. When the evening came, Everpine glittered. 6 plantation families arrived in fine clothes and fine lies. Dinner passed with practiced laughter. At 9, after dessert in the great hall with coffee and brandy, Evelyn stood and rang a small bell. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, voice clear as a knife. I have a special entertainment planned for tonight. Something unforgettable. The colonel smiled indulgently beside the fireplace. He thought she was finally behaving. He had no idea he was standing in the center of his own execution. Before we begin, Evelyn said, I must tell you a true story about this house, this plantation, and the man standing before you. The air changed. Fans paused mid-flutter. Smiles stiffened. For 3 years, she continued, I have been silent when silence was demanded, blind when blindness was preferred, deaf to suffering that filled this place. Evelyn, the colonel, warned, his voice sharp. She ignored him. My husband has spent the past 3 years raping enslaved women on this plantation. Young women, girls. He has used power to take what was never his. The room erupted and froze at once, gasps, a sharp clink of glass, a wave of horror dressed up as disbelief. That is a damned lie, the colonel roared. Hysterical Evelyn laughed, cold and bright. No husband. Angry, yes. Disgusted, certainly. But not hysterical. I have names, dates, Ruth 15, Mercy 16, others. He surged forward, but she lifted a hand. Touch me in anger, and every person here will witness it. Is that how you wish to proceed? He stopped, fists trembling. The guests remained where they were, trapped by the same social paralysis that had trapped truth for generations. You wonder why I do this publicly, Evelyn said. Because the silence around these crimes is its own violence. Because his reputation needs destroying. Because someone must say the words out loud where you cannot pretend you didn't hear them. A woman's voice, small strained, asked, why not handle it quietly? Quietly? Evelyn repeated. Report it to authorities who don't consider it a crime. Leave and let him continue, no. Her gaze sharpened. I want him to understand what he has done. I want him to feel shame so profound it fractures his soul." Then she turned toward the doorway where Isaiah stood among the serving staff, still as stone. Their eyes met. She gave the slightest nod. "This is Isaiah," she said. "He has survived this plantation's cruelty, and tonight he and I will demonstrate how fragile supremacy truly is." The colonel's face drained of color. "You cannot." "I can," Evelyn said. "Because unlike you, I will do nothing without consent. My choice. His choice." She addressed Isaiah, voice carrying to every corner. "If you do not wish to be part of this, you can walk away now." Isaiah stared at her, and in his gaze lived a history that made the room itself feel guilty. Then he spoke loud enough that even the lamps seemed to listen. "I understand, Mrs. Carrington," he said, "and I choose." A ripple of panic ran through the guests. The colonel made a broken sound. "Please." Evelyn's voice softened into something crueler than shouting. Did Ruth say, "Please"? Did Mercy? Did you stop? Before she could move further, Sarah stepped forward from the servants' line, her face carved into determination. "Before she does anything," Sarah said, "every one of y'all needs to hear this." The colonel tried to speak, but Sarah cut him off. "No, sir. You had your say for 12 years. Now I'll have mine." She told them the truth, the cleaning up the sobbing girls, the wounds, the selling away of those whose stories might return. She looked at the guests with a kind of contempt that was earned. "Y'all knew," she said. "Maybe not the details, but you knew something you didn't want to know." Silence fell like a verdict. Evelyn looked at the room, at the white faces forced into awareness, at the colonel shrinking into himself, at Isaiah, steady as an anchor, at Sarah, standing like a witness summoned by God. She felt something she hadn't expected, not triumph, but exhaustion. The point had been made so sharply, the air still rang. She let her hand fall. "Perhaps the demonstration isn't necessary," she said slowly. "Perhaps the threat is enough." She stepped close to her husband. "You will sell this plantation," she said, voice iron. "You will free every enslaved person here properly, legally, with papers. You will leave Mississippi and never return. And if you refuse," her eyes held his like a blade held to the throat, "then I finish what I started, and I promise you reality will be worse than your imagination." The colonel's shoulders collapsed. His voice came out as a rasp. "I'll do it. Whatever you want. Just end this." Evelyn turned to the guests. "You are witnesses. If he breaks his promise, you will know why, and you will bear responsibility for what happens next." One by one, they nodded. Complicit now in a different way, bound by knowledge they could not unlearn. The night ended not with applause, not with relief, but with the grinding work of consequence. Lawyers were summoned from Natchez. Papers were drafted under watchful eyes. Before dawn, Everpine's future was being dismantled in ink and signatures. Evelyn moved through the quarters, offering what money and resources she could, passage supplies, a start that was still too small against the enormity of what had been stolen. Some left immediately, heading north with terror and hope in their eyes. Others stayed uncertain what freedom meant in Mississippi, where even free could be hunted. As the sky began to pale, Ruth found Evelyn near the edge of the yard. "Mrs. Carrington." Evelyn turned. Ruth looked small in the new light, but there was something unbroken in her gaze. "I don't know if thank you is the right word," Ruth said. "It won't undo what happened. It won't give me back what he took." "I know," Evelyn whispered. "But you made them hear it," Ruth said. "You made them look. My whole life people like you told me I didn't matter. Tonight you told them different. That matters." Tears burned Evelyn's eyes. "I wish I'd done it sooner." "So do I," Ruth said, honest as a wound. "But you did it." By mid-morning, important men arrived, mayor, judge, planters, furious not at the colonel's crimes, but at the exposure. They spoke of hysteria, of scandal, of community. Evelyn met them with calm that felt like a loaded gun. "I am not unwell," she said. "I am not hysterical. I have evidence sent to multiple places. If anything happens to me, it becomes public. Threaten me all you like. I have already sacrificed everything your society can take." They wanted her contained, declared insane, silenced. But she had planned for that too. An hour later, her trunks were loaded. The wagon waited. Isaiah appeared in clothing that wasn't slave clothing anymore. Real trousers, a proper shirt, freedom sitting on him like something both precious and heavy. "They're here," he said, "demanding you." "Let them demand," Evelyn said. At the gate she took one last look at Everpine. The columns, the manicured grounds, the fields stretching wide under the sun. It had once looked like beauty. Now it looked like a monument to violence wrapped in manners. "Where will you go?" she asked Isaiah. "North," he said. "Eventually. First I make sure the papers hold. Make sure this doesn't collapse the second you leave." "That's dangerous." "Everything is dangerous," Isaiah replied. "At least this danger means something." Evelyn climbed into the wagon. As it rolled away, she did not feel regret, only a strange completion, like a chapter that should have ended long ago, had finally closed. The riverboat left Natchez at sunset, the paddle wheel churning brown water into foam. Evelyn traveled under a false name. No one questioned a well-dressed white woman with money and decorum. The privilege that had once trapped her now carried her out. In her cabin, she wrote, "Not a letter for society, a record, names, dates, truths newspapers would not print." Her own guilt inked into every line the months she suspected and said nothing. The comfort she wore like a blindfold, the way her act dramatic satisfying, had still been small against the enormity of the system. A knock came on her door. An envelope. Inside a note from a servant who had witnessed the night at Everpine. It said in careful words that what she did mattered not because it fixed everything, but because it changed one life. Someone's sister was going north with papers and money. A chance. Evelyn read it 3 times, crying quietly over the desk. She had expected condemnation. She had not expected proof that a single crack could let light through. When New Orleans finally rose along the river like a restless dream, she stepped into its noise and crowds and possibility and kept walking. She didn't know if she would be remembered as hero or madwoman or cautionary tale. She only knew this: she had stopped lying to herself. She had refused the comfort of silence. She had spoken truth in a place where truth could get you buried. It would never be enough. But it was something. And sometimes, in a world built to make you swallow what is unbearable, something is the beginning of everything.